Well, hey, welcome to the Tell Me More podcast. I'm Andy. This is my wife, Jessica. And this is David and Michelle hanging out with us today. But before we introduce them and get started with all that, a couple of quick things. If you are on Facebook or YouTube, you can at any time during our broadcast ask a question, make a comment, and we'll try to catch it as best as we can. Do know that there's about a minute to minute and a half delay when you're watching online. So just know if you comment on something and it takes a second for us to get back to it, that's why. But today we are joined with some of our favorite people, David and Michelle. How long have you guys been in the church now? Has it been 3 years?
Coming 4, I believe.
Is it? It's close to 4?
Okay. Close to 4. Yeah, we've been in town 7 years, and we started coming here post-COVID.
Okay.
So probably 2021, somewhere in
When did you start?
2022.
I came November of 21.
I think it was
Okay,
the
so
next
it would have been the next fall. So
Okay.
20.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it'll be 4 years this fall.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Cool. That's crazy. That's crazy thing has been that long already.
It is. It's nuts. Every time we think about it, it's unimaginable. We've been here 7 years in Ulysses already.
Yeah. It doesn't feel, I mean, we'll be here 5 in November, and it does not feel
Yeah,
like
time
5
flies for
years at
sure.
all. Well, tell us a little bit, for those of you who may not know these guys, tell them a little bit about yourselves. How long y'all been married? You've been here 7 years. What do you do? All that kind of stuff.
I'm a head of maintenance, electrical at Skyland Grain, ag company spread out over 4 states here in the Plains. That's what brought us to Ulysses is my job, and we've been I've been saved since 2012.
Okay.
Is when I was brought to Christ by a good friend of mine and introduced in a way you couldn't deny, and so I've got a lot of people that are in this church have heard my testimony, but it's been an incredible journey, and what we're going to talk about today hit home big time for me.
Cool. How about you, Michelle?
Well, I'm a teacher. I've taught over 30 years, and I teach at Sullivan, and I'm the ESL teacher there. Let's see, what else am I missing?
Have you always taught ESL, or was that new to here?
That was new to here. I taught 25 years in my old district, and I had 1st, 4th, 6th, and Title I. Came here, taught 4th grade 2 years, and then got switched to ESL. So wish I knew Spanish more, working on it, but I can teach them to read and speak English. So
That's
well.
awesome. That's super cool. David, for those of you who don't know, also helps lead men's ministry here at the church. So if you've ever gone to like a men's breakfast, or if you've come and hung out at the men's conference, he's been integral in making those things happen over the last several years, and that's been a ton of fun to get to work with you on that. Well, we just got back from vacation.
We did.
We went to the mountains in Colorado. What was your favorite thing we did with the kids?
I think my favorite was probably Pagosa Springs. I like water, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you do the Sulphur Springs, the
Hot
hot
springs?
springs?
Yeah, there was along a pathway there. It was just the public springs, and we went and stuck our feet in there, and Andy pretty much just sat in there the whole time.
I love
He likes hot tubs and stuff.
the first church I ever worked at. I got to stay in somebody's house for a week to house sit with their dogs, and they said their hot tub was hooked up to a natural gas line. They said they had never seen their gas bill be that high in the summer ever, because I got to their house for 7 days and went from 6 p.m. till about midnight sitting in their hot tub with a 65-inch TV. Just sitting out there. It was great. So I enjoyed myself. That was fun.
Yeah. But the river was cold, and so the kids were hopping back and forth the whole time. So it was fun. It was nice.
You guys just kind of had a vacation, sort of, kind of.
I don't know
a
if you
trip.
can call it vacation. We, our youngest child, our son, got married a couple weeks ago, and that felt more like work than vacation.
I believe that.
Probably, yeah.
Well,
But,
the week before we babysat our grandkids,
yeah.
and a 1 and a 3-year-old for a day and a half, 2 nights was.
We found out that a 1 and 3-year-old, 2
Boy.
adults in a full-size bed is not okay.
Yeah. That'll do it every time. I think the most important word for grandparents is the word Dramamine.
No.
Just knock those kids out. Just give them some. Treat it like a pill that you put in some cheese, like a dog, and just give them like a little snack with some Dramamine sprinkled in.
I figured out that the reason that we have kids is that so we can have grandkids.
Yeah.
Oh.
Kids are highly overrated. Grandkids
Way
are
more
highly underrated. So
Yeah, I mean, I hope that's true.
Yeah. one
yeah,
day-
you'll get
one
there.
day we'll
You'll
know.
get there.
Yeah, just a little bit. So let's jump into the text today. Do we have any comments or anything real quick before we?
We've
before
got
we jump
some
in?
family members all commenting on Facebook, but nothing for us yet.
Let's see. I'm just now pulling it up. We just have people saying, "Hey, just a mom 90." Hey, that's a terrible username. We need to work on that because I don't know who that is. So just a mom 90. If you want to put who you are, that'd be great. Preston Eulis, which Preston used to live here a couple years ago. Hey, Preston, it's good to see anybody on Facebook saying hi.
We've got hello from KC, Glorious Schwick, and Linda Shapeland. Hello, fam. Glad y'all joined. So they're just saying hi to each other.
Okay,
They don't
all
care
right.
about us. They're just
They're
just saying hi
We got
to
a
each other
random
on
chat
Facebook.
going on.
Hey, we one step at a time. We're getting them to actually participate. Now we just got to get them to participate in a way that is interactive
all right.
with
It's
us.
good.
So that's
It's
good. Before we jump into the text, I keep on forgetting to do this every week. We have one more person in the room that's with us. Our producer here, Kenny, is hanging out with us, making sure audio is good and all that kind of stuff, video switching. And so whether you realize it or not, what makes this podcast probably a lot more enjoyable is how it sounds, how it looks, all those things. And so Kenny is the man sitting over to my left. So
Yep. And he killed a fly before
he
we
did.
started.
He murdered
so that really
a
helps
fly.
things.
Expeditiously. Very.
I have a
Took it
text
out.
from a buddy of mine that I grew up with, is Morgan, and it says this track is bussin'. Morgan is pushing 40
Morgan.
and too old to use the word bussin'. All right, so but no, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know if he's watching the podcast or if he's just he sent me a track. Okay.
He's just being funny.
All right, so we're going to jump into the text and then we'll talk about the message that we had. If you weren't with us this morning, we had a guest with us, Dr. Kent Duncan, who is the Kansas network of the Assemblies of God. He is the secretary and treasurer. He and his wife, Debbie, also pastored a church in Meriden, Kansas for 32 years before they went to the district office. And he is actually, I thought about it this afternoon, he is the longest, not the longest guest, he is the most invited guest that we've had here in 5 years. So
Yeah.
he's been here at least 2 times a year every year I've been here. Plus he's been here a couple of years 3 times. So he actually would have already been here this year at least once, but he was interim pastoring at a church in Great Bend. So, well, let's jump into the scripture that he preached from, and then we'll start to talk about it. Verse 14 of chapter 8 of Romans, it says, "For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. For you did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God, and if children of God, then heirs, and heirs of God, and fellow heirs with Christ, provided we suffer with him in order that we may also be glorified with him." So this is a little different. Normally, when people hang out with us on the podcast, we send them notes and stuff a few days in advance. But because I didn't preach this morning, we're a little more on the fly. So I figured we'd just start by asking the question, what stuck out to you from this morning?
Because of my journey, because of my walk with Christ, the way I came to know him and experience him, this particular, I believe any new follower of Christ needs to hear this right away. Because I was crippled with guilt. I was crippled with angst over what I'd done in my past. It took me a long time to figure out, I knew I was forgiven, but being the true son of God, being a father, and Ken preached it incredibly well today. the relationship between you and God is father and son, is father and child. And he preached it incredibly well today, and I wish somebody would have explained all that to me a long time ago.
Yeah.
Because I was always trying to measure up, to be worthy. My kid doesn't have to be worthy for me to love them. So God doesn't expect me to be worthy for him to love me either. So that's what jumped out at me this morning for sure.
No, that's good. I think one of the most important truths that you see in that is that when you begin to think in that context, it helps us understand the idea that we have confidence in our salvation, not because it's just some prayer that we prayed that holds us forever, but we can be confident in that sonship. When I think of like reading the Psalms and reading David's confidence every single time he messed up, that he would immediately go back and ask the Lord in multiple places in the Psalm, search my heart, help me see all these areas. I think a lot of times we struggle with that conversation with the Lord because we don't see this adoptive dynamic. We don't see this nature. And while David didn't have that language because he didn't have the New Testament, I think it was evident in his life that there was a confidence in, oh, no, I'm a child of God. Yeah. That God cares for me, that God sees me, that God is near to me, all those things. That's good.
Yeah.
Michelle?
Probably what stuck out to me was the whole Jesus had suffering in order to get the glory. Because I think so many times, especially as a new Christian, you think, or just as a Christian, oh, things are going to be great. And that's what outside people think, oh, your life's perfect. Yeah. Well, really, Jesus had to go through suffering to get the glory. And we assume sometimes when we are suffering that we're, God's forgot about us or something. But realizing that he's actually using us to help. And then we'll see the glory later on. But to get through those suffering parts is part of the process. I think a lot of times we just think that we want to skip over that.
Yeah. Well, it's also how we learn, and it's how we move forward. And if we don't I was telling one of the kids when we're rafting on our trip, if life is easy, then it's boring, but troubles come, things come that are going to, harm us or hurt us or whatever. But that suffering, that pushing through is what gives us more strength, which gives us more knowledge, which empowers us to move forward, gives us more courage, whatever it is. But without that struggle, without those things that just get in the way, we don't learn, we don't grow, we don't move forward. And those things are super important, super vital to who we are, evolving and being who Christ has called us to be, for sure.
Well, and I think it even, as a teacher, I go back to the whole, I try to tell parents this all the time. You can't solve all your kids' problems for them. Right. They have to learn how to do things on their own. Yep. Well, it kind of hit me today. I'm like, it's the same thing, God, of course, is like our Father, and he knows that we have to learn some things on our own in order to grow. Yeah. Also. So, for sure. It's really no different.
That's good. I think that deserves a round of applause. No, I think there's so much truth to that. There's a book C.S. Lewis wrote, I think in the 60s, called The Problem with Pain. And one of the things that he talks about is absence of pain lends itself to significantly less wisdom. And we forget that some of the greatest lessons we learn, some of the greatest things that shape us are what we learn through difficult moments and through difficult circumstances. And so there's a beauty in seeing at the very end of this passage for him to say, you're a child of God, but there is suffering in the intermittent space. There is, in the intermittent space being prior to being with God for eternity, that there is a suffering and that there is suffering that we walk through, but that suffering is, it's a moment, it's a season, and it's not the end. Glory is the end. Mm-hmm. Stepping into the glory of God is an end. So that's good. Yeah,
so much of our culture too is designed around this comfort thing, and we strive on what is the easiest, what is most comfortable. We don't like to go out of those zones. And, you kind of have to ask yourself, like, if you aren't struggling, are you really growing? Like, are we really, even as a society, as, Christians, if we aren't struggling, then what are we doing? Like, what's going on? Like, what are we doing? We're just living life and things are just, easy peasy. But is that really living? Is that really growing? Is that really being who we were designed to be, And so I think it's wise to engage in struggle. It's wise to seek it out, and not in the fact of just like stupid struggle, like just not thinking things through and having struggles, but like, you know what, spending extra time in the Word, just those kind of things. Maybe, get up in the morning and go for a walk, struggles that your body needs in order to be stronger, those kind of things. I think it's all important. All of it's spiritual, all of it.
This is a little bit different, but similar. One of the things that I heard a guy say years ago, and it's something that I've said here multiple times because it stuck with me, is that anything that brings value to your life eventually becomes a discipline. It becomes something that you struggle with. It becomes something that you have to deal with, and in some ways, in suffering, you process it that way. And I think about the things that have been the most intense in seasons of my life, but they are also the most forming. And they're miserable in the moment. They're miserable in the moment, but there's good fruit on the other side of those moments.
Nothing worthwhile was ever come by easily.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we can find some scripture that says that somewhere, but
Yes.
yeah. I
Tim
don't.
Wilson did.
What's that?
Tim Wilson did.
Of course he did.
James 1-2-4.
Yeah, exactly. Knew he'd come up big today.
Hey, just a mom is Shannon. Hey, Shannon. Can we change your username? Because you're not just a mom. You're Shannon. Just throwing that out there. But no, anyway, there's so much beauty in those things. And I can even say, as a pastor, watching people walk through some of the hardest things in life to do with the loss of, whether it be a spouse or the loss of a child. Unfortunately, in the 16 years I've been in ministry, I've done that multiple times. We've done that as a couple, walk with families through some of those things. But who they end up on the other side, if they'll allow it to be something that develops them, is an absolutely beautiful thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I've experienced loss prior to being saved and after, for sure, and it's a rather significant difference between the two.
Say more about that.
Experiencing loss as not walking with Christ at the time, experiencing loss, it's like the world's crashing down around your ears and you have nothing to save you, nothing to pull you out from the drowning that you're experiencing. Experiencing loss after you're saved and knowing that whether that person you lost was an active Christian or was but believing that they were saved. They might not be going to church every Sunday or but knowing that they knew Jesus, they knew who he was.
Yeah.
And taking stock in the fact that they're in a better place and that you don't have to worry about their struggles anymore because they have gone on to the glory that we talked about today. There's going to be struggles and there's going to be glory, and the glory is when we meet at the pearly gates. I hope that's not the only glory we find in Jesus. I hope we find some along the way too.
Sure.
But struggling with loss and being a lukewarm Christian, that's hard to wrap your head around.
Well, I remember, and I think at the time, it kind of, and how it talked about the fear can come in. And a lot of times they say it can come out as anger. When you don't know how else to handle it, the fear will act out, and you see it in different places because you don't have any way to, place to turn or what, how to handle it at the time. Yeah. And it's just so much different when you can turn to God for that peace and comfort and know somebody's taken care of.
Yeah.
When I think of suffering, I often think of a good buddy of mine that I developed a relationship with when we lived in Florida. His name's Brian, and Brian and his wife struggled a long time with infertility, and finally ended up having a kid about, was it 3 months before or after Jackson? They're real close in age.
I thought it was when we moved to Oregon.
No, when he had.
Oh, yeah, they were close in age.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I just within like 3 or 4 months of each other. And they ended up having a second kid very quick, actually really close to the same age difference as our kids. And when he was going through the pandemic, like we all were, he was working from home, and his firstborn son drowned in a kiddie pool. And he was 3 or 4 years old. Like, I mean, this much water, it was a tiny deal. But I had the privilege of walking through that with him in some ways. And the interesting thing about that, like what you're talking about, is I've done that with multiple people. But Brian did a couple of things that I think is super important. Number one, he got help. They within 24 hours of his son passing away, were in a mental health counseling extended time for several days off and on to walk through the loss. But he and his wife walked through it together, and now they're on the other side of it. And God's really done some healing work there. But it's because, he would tell you, it is in large part because of the faith journey that they went through with that. It's like 86 or 88% of people when they lose a child get divorced. It's very rare when that happens that people don't stay together, or that people stay together. And watching how they've just tackled that with their faith, and dealt with that loss and walked through that suffering and allowed it to produce something significant in their life has been really incredible to watch.
Yeah.
It's been really incredible to watch. So
Yeah. I mean, the big part of after you become a Christian, you have a community that you can really rely on. And I think that's a big part of what Christianity is about. It's about community. It's about unity. It's about us as one body moving, and helping the world and the people around us, find out who they are in Christ and, come to trust in Jesus and stuff. But that heavily relies on the unity that Christ has, that Christ wants us to be, that unified body. So,
yeah, no, that's good. What else stuck out to you guys?
I don't know. As we were talking a little bit this afternoon, I kind of started thinking about when I went to a men's retreat kind of deal, and I was hearing testimonies of other men and all the suffering, addictions, all the things that they had went through, and that their bond and their walk with Christ was so strong, and their faith was so palpable. I mean, they just oozed faith in Christ. And I struggled with it for a while, because I was like, man, I didn't have all those struggles. I didn't have those problems. I didn't have all that backstory before I came to Christ. I was living a pretty good life. Everything was okay. I thought I was whole. Found out I wasn't, but I thought I was whole. So when we're talking about the suffering, I'm like, I don't know that I've really suffered for Christ, and I don't know when that's coming, because I have a feeling God has got something planned for me going forward, and I don't know if that's going to involve suffering, but I also know that because my faith is so much stronger now than it was 10 years ago, that I can handle what's coming,
Yeah.
For a long time, I tried to find my calling, and everybody was like, I had buddies that were adopting kids and that were going into ministry and that were doing all these things. And I couldn't figure out what I was doing and what he was calling me to do. And then finally I figured out when I got to Ulysses and got involved here, and I thought, God wasn't calling me necessarily. He was preparing me for what he had in store for me.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Just because he's not knocking down your door saying, you need to do this.
Yeah.
He may be preparing you for the time when he calls you to do something.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the suffering part, I've always had a tough time wrapping my head around, because I just didn't struggle like a lot of people have struggled for Christ or in their life before Christ, or whatever the case may be. I've had a pretty good life and not a lot of suffering involved. So I'm hoping that it's not all coming in the next four or 5 years.
There's a guy that he wrote a good bit in the 1500s. It's either the 14 or 1500s, I think. But his name's St. John of the Cross, and he talks about this idea of the dark night of the soul. And a lot of times when people talk about suffering in modern Christian contexts, they talk about it from the vantage point of like an event that you suffer through. And there are some people that's their story. Mm-hmm. There are some people that's like, just like my friend who had a child that passed away and drowned. You see those moments where people really do suffer. However, there is also this understanding that suffering may also just look like seasons that we feel very, very distant from God. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of the dark night of the soul is not necessarily that you go through something that's difficult and challenging and you feel distant, but it's just a season that you feel, it's a long season where you feel detached in your experience, in your faith. Mm-hmm. And so what St. John of the Cross would say is that the glory that the scripture in Romans 8 is talking about is on the other side of that. And so it may not be a moment or something that devastating happens, but it may just be part of the pathway. Because what we do know is that suffering or distance or the dark night of the soul, however we would process that, those things are inevitable if we're going to be people who are intimate with God. Intimacy and maturity is developed in those moments, but it looks different for everybody.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be this big drastic story. There's a lot of people that have had relatively chill lives, but everybody has something that they can struggle through, that they do struggle through. There's mind shifts. There's things that people have learned as kids that they're finding out now, which it wasn't the best way to handle something or to think or whatever. And those are struggles. Those are things that we have to overcome, and those are things that we have to move forward from. Ways that you grew up, or even just small things that you've just thought your whole life, which were lies, or just things that weren't true. And now you're finding out that, this is the best way to go about, life or whatever. And those are important things for us to overcome and to deal with and to move forward from, for sure.
Yeah. Those that are, I'm just reading a comment from YouTube. It says, those that are suffering for Christ sometimes won't know because of God's grace and comfort. That might be true in some spaces, but I would push back on that a little, because part of what makes suffering the developmental tool that we see God use in Scripture and in our own life is being aware of the difficulty in the season that you're walking through and choosing to still believe in brokenness, in difficulty, that I am a son or a daughter of God. It's that process of choosing, even though this is a hard season. Mm-hmm. And I don't disagree. I'm not sure exactly who that is. Y'all's usernames on YouTube are killing me. Mm-hmm. But I don't disagree that there are some things that we walk through, like David was talking about, going through loss and experiencing that dynamic where there's more comfort than there was, but it's still loss. Mm-hmm. When you go to a funeral and people, like, a big pet peeve for me is I wouldn't say that I would refuse to, but I strongly encourage families not to use language like celebration of life at funerals. And the reason for that is God gave us grief as a gift. Like, there are healthy things that come out of that process. And so I encourage people, hey, let's not try to make a funeral not what it is. It's a time to deal with grief and pain. And whenever you see somebody walking around a funeral that just lost somebody they're close to, acting like everything's all good in the hood. You just want to go get. That's not maturity. That's denial. Like that's not healthy. For anybody. Do I get a boom boom for that? Up there. Okay, there we go. I mean, it's important that we understand that there's a difference between being comforted through suffering versus pretending like we're not suffering and not being honest about our feelings because we just want to be able to say, well, because I follow Jesus, I'm never going to have a challenge or I'm never going to feel it. So,
suffering is the symptom that something is not right. Like there's something incorrect and that you need to move forward or to move through whatever it is that we're dealing with. And suffering is a part of life. It's just how we know that it's just a friction. Suffering is that friction. And without that friction, then we don't know that, we don't understand that how we're living is uncomfortable and is incorrect. And if we don't feel that friction, if we don't feel that suffering, then we won't know that there's something else, There's always there's a duality to life, There's chaos and suffering and all of that, and then there's peace and harmony. And you can't have one without the other. You can't understand how one works without the other. But without it, then you don't know that there is a better spot for you in life. There is a better place for you to be in life. So
yeah, you could also say, I don't know forgiveness if I've never had offense. Or, I don't have a good, if I've never been properly wounded, right? If I've never really been hurt, I don't really have value for what Christ did for me because I don't know what it's like to take on that feeling or to feel that pain and to feel that uncomfortableness and to feel that frustration. So, well, we're getting close to time. I think we're right at 5:30. Do we have any comments or anything that we need to be reading?
No questions.
I see some
a few
people over
comments,
there.
but we've just people saying, "Hey, y'all," and "Oh, that's a good word, David." Not sure when that was said, but
Who was that?
Mavi.
Mavi?
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
So we've got some comments, but no questions.
I think
See,
there's.
Or go ahead.
I think there's a real way you can tell someone's spiritual maturity is how they deal with struggles and with suffering, because the spiritual mature person has a tendency to push through that towards Christ, that suffering, and lean towards Christ. And someone with a little less maturity in their walk will have a tendency to blame,
Yeah.
to point fingers on why they're going through a
Right.
situation. And I've noticed that in our walk, and I've noticed that in my walk, that I can tell where I'm at in my relationship on how I deal with challenges.
Yeah.
Well, so this is a very surfacey example of what you're talking about, but I tell staff all the time when we're talking about like a technical issue, whether it be printers for check-in or something that Rocky's working on. But I've said this for years in the tech space, that if we blame the equipment, we never come up with a solution to fix the issue.
Right.
So if you say this thing isn't working, it's this dadgum computer, you'll never fix the problem.
Completely accurate.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the computer's fault.
It's always,
Or the printer.
I blame the electrician most of the time.
There you go. That's a definite possibility. So does everybody else that works for my company.
But no, but there is when I choose to not point the finger at the equipment and ask the question, okay, what am I doing wrong that's not making it execute the way I want to? I'm much quicker at coming up with the solution to move past it. And the same is very true with our spiritual lives. There is good work in understanding wounds from parents or wounds from history. That's good work. But at some point, if I'm aware of it, I have to come out of it and go, but I'm not going to let this be the reason that I walk broken for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
There has to be a moment where you say, okay, this is good information for me to understand where I am, but I'm not going to be this person anymore. I'm not going to live this way anymore. I can see that it's wrong. I can see that it's broken. I'm going to choose to go a different direction.
I've heard somebody say that if you get triggered, look at it as a gift for you to be able to change and grow and be better than where you're at right now.
That sounds like praying for patience too.
Yes. Yes.
That's highly overrated. But
Yes. Thanks for the assistive. Who is Woodster?
I don't know.
Who is Woodster?
I don't know. Woodster 33.
But Tim, y'all all take note. Those of y'all who are on YouTube, Tim's username is @TimWilson. 9H something. So that if y'all want to know how to do your usernames, just look at Tim's. But well, we've got like 1 minute left before we get cut off from the internet from our mandatory thing. So I want to thank David and Michelle for hanging out with us. Thank you so much, Kenny Holmes, for being our producer today. And we'll see you guys next week on July 5th right here on the Tell Me More podcast. We'll see you next Sunday.